Hi there, how's everybody doing today? I'd like to thank the Indiana Forage Council for giving me the opportunity to be here today, and the American Grassland Forage Council for having this presentation session. Well, I work at a place called Traders Point Creamery in Zionsville, Indiana, which is just on the northwest side of Indianapolis, about 20 minutes from downtown. We do on-farm production of these products. They're all organic, 100% grass-fed produced, mostly bottled milk yogurt products, and then also aged raw milk cheeses, all made on farm. We do a lot of business with health-conscious consumers and people who are looking for alternatives to conventional produced dairy products. A lot of people who have gone through things traumatic to their health, as in chemotherapy and things like that, find it much easier to consume our products. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. They just happen to find that themselves. Our farm, 180 to 95 acres of grazable land, 285 acres of hay fields, around 115 cows of varying ages. Right now we're a little heifer heavy because we haven't had so many heifers held back in previous crops, and about 50 to 65 milking year round. So the goal of the farm, or I guess as our forage producer, the biodiverse ecosystem that is resilient, resists the effects of extremes, and has increasing forage production potential in the long term. Now I'm going to try to get into some of what that means here in the next couple slides, but essentially we've encountered a lot of adversity over the past few years with the hot, dry weather, and so my goal in the future to help us reduce our overhead costs and our feeding costs is to produce pasture that can deal with the effects of drought and heat more effectively, and continue to produce longer into the dormant season, so that we don't have to feed as much hay and high quality feed product to the dairy cows in the winter. So the philosophy that goes into that. I like to manage in sync with nature. I'll talk a little bit more about what that means later. I like to landscape with livestock rather than machinery. I don't like when things break. I'm just not smart enough to fix these things. I like to incorporate natural systems for soil improvement and production efficiency, meaning I like to use the soil biology and also all kinds of other biology that we find in our area. And then I also like to minimize inputs and heavy-handed management, meaning I don't like to try to force my pasture and hay land to do something that it doesn't want to do. All right, so managing in sync with nature. First thing I try to do is I get our birthing schedule synced up so that we're producing the majority of our heifers and replacement stock in the spring. That also means that we allow our heifer crop that we're intending to keep for meat or dairy production to nurse for 10 months minimum. That's a little uncommon for a dairy producer to say, but that's what we like to do because we feel we get the best return on a 100% grass-fed animal in that way, because they have a fully developed rumen and are able to efficiently convert forage into milk for us. And then with the grazing density and rotation, with that, I'm going to get into a little bit of nuts and bolts talk here. I apologize for that. But with that, I take into consideration the time of the year and the moisture level, and also the heat and the rate at which the forage is growing. So in the springtime, what we'll do is more like what you see here. We do twice-a-day minimum rotations, and sometimes up to 12 per day. And we will, when it's high growth and high moisture climate, we'll let the cows kind of open them up, say we have 55 cows in the milking herd at a given time. We'll give them probably an acre and a half per 12-hour period and let them just sort of graze the top third off of the grass. And we'll continue doing that and have fast pasture rotations so that we're coming back on ourselves in about 15 to 20 days. We do that in the spring because during that high growth time, if we graze only the top third of the grass, then the grass doesn't even realize it's been grazed, and we're basically taking that food to the bank, is what I like to say. That way there's no dieback period of the roots in the forage, and then we are able to continue the growth of the plant as if nothing had ever happened to it. And so then by the time we come back around again, it's continued its growth pattern, and it's now, instead of being boot high, it's knee high, and then that pattern continues throughout the spring until about mid-June, early July, we can see seedless pasture stands that are about mid-rib on the cow's side. And then that way that allows us to stockpile a little bit for the drier months and continue grazing even if we have a drought. Those are the types of considerations I like to take in for the spring. And then in the summer, when it's a little bit drier, slower growth rate, we've compiled that organic matter layer on top of the ground in the mid-rib type forages we're seeing. We'll shrink the rotation size, put them to about a density of about 500,000 pounds per acre of cow, and we'll take that organic matter and just smash it onto the ground, create a mat of sorts, and then also push some of that organic matter into the soil. That way we're kind of feeding the microbes, the earthworms, the dung beetles, all that sort of thing that helps us out in the long run with soil aeration, organic matter content in our soils, and remineralization. Those things, and then also with the mat we create on top of the soil, we're creating a microclimate that shields those things from the harsh summer and retains moisture for us late in fall. Those are the kinds of considerations we take into account, and then also if we can stockpile enough, we can graze quality feed for our dairy herd longer into the dormant season, November, December, maybe even January is a goal of mine. Okay, so landscaping with the livestock. This is something we've started recently where we take areas that typically weren't pasture areas and started to try to reclaim them with the cows. We basically find a place that's fairly sparsely density in like new forest, saplings, things like that, and we'll go in with the cows and just graze into the brush areas at high densities for short amount of times. And they'll eat some of the saplings down, which does enough damage that it kills them for the next year. And basically, we gradually, over a period of 3 to 5 years, will turn a new growth forest into a new pasture land for us. And that's one way we've been able to capitalize on our limited land resource since we're so close to the city. Remineralization. We have kind of an uncommon mineral program for our cows. We don't feed a mixed ration at all times during the year. So what I do is I have a split mineral program. It's 16 mineral free choice program where we have them all set out in separate bays, and based on what the cows feel is deficient in the soil and or the forage, they're able to select what minerals they take in. That helps me in several ways. I don't have to track as closely what's going on in the soil. That's a cost to our farm if we'd have to do that very commonly. And it also helps us with inputs because what happens is the cows selecting the mineral that's deficient in that particular pasture, a good portion of that ends up going right through them even though they are utilizing it for their biology. Good portion goes right through and onto the ground, and over time the goal is to have that remineralize our pastures for us. Only time will tell if that actually is working, if my theory is correct. But hopefully with some soil tests here in the future, we'll show that we're making progress. And then lastly, altering forage population ratios. What I mean by that is what I was saying earlier about the reversing of forest land into pasture land and or anything that may be detrimental to your management scheme. For instance, we had a big problem with alfalfa-heavy pastures recently, which I know that sounds silly to say that's a problem, but it was causing a lot of bloat issues with our cows. And so we had to figure out a way to alter our ratio of alfalfa to mixed grasses, and so we had to identify the weakest point of an alfalfa's growing period and sort of capitalize on that with cow pressure and essentially kill some of the alfalfa in lieu of the grasses that we preferred so that we could have a mixed biodiverse stand rather than one that would be dangerous for the cows at any given time. Next, okay, here's an example of a reclamation project we had. This hadn't been grazed probably for 15, 20 years. It was starting to go into forest. It was a lot of woody species, a lot of older forbs that had gone to seed head and come back down to just dead stem. So we brought the cows in, and that's them. The reason I made the decision, and we wouldn't do this with the dairy herd, I should clarify. We would do this with our dry herd where they not close to birthing, so that they don't have as high of a nutrition requirement. The reason I chose to do this and didn't decide to supplement with hay was because as you can see down there on the bottom, there is some green stuff growing down there for them to achieve proper nutritional balance and knock down the dead stuff as well and kind of destroy the woody species for us. There's a contrast image of a place they were and the place they were going into, and that's what it looked like when they were done with it. All of this helps us out because, like I said, we're trying to incorporate natural systems into our management structure. That's a picture of a cow pat that I knocked the top off with my boot. So we're trying to incorporate as many earthworms into our farm as possible, just because they provide us with lots of nutrient availability. They bring stuff up from the subsoil. Same with any weeds or forbs that we find. They're tap rooted. They bring it right to the top, and then we lay it down on the surface. So all of my considerations when it comes to grazing and forage management goes towards feeding these guys so they can help me out with long-term health of the system in general. Like I say there, inoculate the soil with biology, meaning the cow dung. I like to spread that out as evenly as possible, which is why we group the cows so tightly for part of the year, because the more tightly they're grouped, the more evenly the manure is spread. Same with the, yeah, that's basically. All right, and then I think this is the last slide, input minimization. Big time reduces costs. We found that is the biggest thing that's holding us back from being more successful. The problem with this is that it does increase your response time, so if you can't afford to be patient, then you've got to find another way to do it. But at this point, we are able to increase our response time and be okay with that, because we feel that it'll pay us back in the long term, and it'll turn out to be a profitable endeavor for us. And then also, it does foster creativity, because if you take some options off the table, for instance, increased mechanization or complex inputs, it does make you think a little bit harder about what you're doing and how to do it better, and different ways of doing it, and think outside the box like the previous presenter was talking about. And then, like I said, I found that the input minimization has been the largest effect on our bottom line, and helped us out the most in the last couple of years in being able to produce more forage than we need, and being able to sell some hay this year instead of consuming it all in our dairy herd. And that's it. Were there any questions? We sell on-farm direct and through retail outlets across the country, to Whole Foods, Kroger stores, Marsh stores in local Indianapolis areas, and then health food markets throughout the nation, like I said. And then we also do meat product. I didn't mention the meat product, but we do sell the meat product on-farm, direct retail to the customer. Anybody else? We milk year-round. We do harvest hay and feed stored hay for about 3 months of the year. Oh, sorry, back there.
What's your biggest challenge versus a conventional forage program?
Biggest challenge versus a conventional forage program. I suppose that would be, like I said, the increased time of response. Whereas in a conventional forage program, you can apply fertilizers and chemical stimulants to the soil and achieve the production efficiency more quickly, whereas we have to wait and do things in a more roundabout way. Yep. Managing drought. We do have an irrigation system on farm. We're lucky enough to have a municipal well nearby that was decommissioned, and we were able to recommission it and get that put in place so that we have an underground piping system that we are able to access with a big reel irrigator. But other than that, we try to increase our soil organic matter year to year. That way we have more resiliency to drought and it's better moisture holding abilities. And like I said, with the forage mat that we like to lay down on the surface, that's a big help to us as far as capturing moisture more effectively, slowing runoff, and capturing dew that forms every morning during the warm season.
I want to repeat that.
Yeah, he was asking, I believe, about the price per hundredweight for our milk versus conventional. We're lucky enough to get a premium set price from our on-farm creamery. They've committed to buy our milk based on components. So I'd say we're in the neighborhood of 30 to 40 cents per hundredweight, or per pound. Anybody else? Yep. We do baleage and chopped hay as well in an ag bag.
I was thinking about the cheese. There are some cheeses where you don't use fermented feeds, and I wondered if you ever made any effort.
Yeah, we do have fermented feeds cause a clostridial problem in cheeses, and so a couple of our cheeses we're unable to make because of the specific culture. It doesn't allow for the clostridial overload. So some of our cheeses are growing season only cheeses, and then we also do sell some, like our cottage cheese product is pasteurized, and then we developed a softer cheese variety off of that that's able to be produced in the winter as well.
Have you seen your organic sales increase over the last 4 to 5 years?
Oh, most certainly. Yeah, sales have been incredible. It's been hard pressed to actually keep up production to meet demand. We're constantly making new agreements with new outlets, and it's I hate to say it, but that's a easy problem to have, I suppose.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.